Welcome to another episode of Containment. My name is Shane, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about what happened yesterday with regards to Justin Trudeau. So if you like this type of content, feel free to subscribe to this channel, like, comment, all that good stuff. So yesterday, the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, invoked the Emergency Act. So what is the Emergency Act? Well, let's go to the actual document, and I'm going to read some of it. That way you can get perspective as to what's going to happen in the next week or so. Let me just share my screen. Hopefully you can read this. All right, so this is the Emergencies Act, and you can find this at laws-lois.justice.gc.ca. So the Emergencies Act, I'm not going to read the entire document. It's pretty long. There's like 60 some articles. So I'm just going to read the first few paragraphs just so you get a snapshot of what this act is. So the Emergencies Act, an act to authorize the taking of special temporary measures to ensure safety and security during national emergencies and to amend other acts in consequence thereof. Preamble. Whereas the safety and security of the individual, the protection of the values of the body politic, and the preservation of the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of the state are fundamental obligations of the government. And whereas the fulfillment of those obligations in Canada may be seriously threatened by a national emergency, and in order to ensure safety and security during such an emergency, the governor in council should be authorized, subject to the supervision, this is very important, of Parliament, to take special temporary measures that may not be appropriate in normal times. And whereas the governor and council, in taking such special temporary measures, would be subject to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Canadian Bill of Rights, and must have regard to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, particularly with respect to those fundamental rights that are not to be limited or abridged even in a national emergency. Now, therefore, Majesty, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's just kind of that's the preamble stuff. So I'm just going to read a little bit more. Stay with me a little bit and we'll go somewhere with this. So this act is binding on Her Majesty in right of Canada or a province. For greater certainty, so federal jurisdiction, for greater certainty, nothing in this act derogates from the authority of the government of Canada to deal with emergencies on any property, territory, or area in respect of which the Parliament of Canada has jurisdiction. National emergency. This is important. For the purpose of this act, a national emergency is an urgent and critical situation of a temporary nature that seriously endangers the lives, health, or safety of Canadians and is of such proportions or nature as to exceed the capacity or authority of a province to deal with, or seriously threatens the ability of the government of Canada to preserve the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of Canada. And that cannot be effectively dealt with under any other law of Canada. So it goes on to talk about this. You can't do this. Where does it say here? Let's go down to the public welfare emergency. So in this part, definitions. The declaration of a public welfare emergency means a proclamation issued pursuant to subsection 6.1. Public welfare emergency means an emergency that is caused by real or imminent fire, flood, drought, storm, earthquake, or other natural phenomenon. Disease in human beings, animals, plants, or accident or pollution, like a nuclear reactor goes up and you're now allowed to move people around because you need to save those people. So it goes on and on and on. I'm not going to read this entire document, but it's important to know a little bit of the construct, the framework behind this. The idea, again, is if the province can't handle something like a natural event, like maybe some kind of a winter storm or something, just swept through all of Ontario and shut everything down, then the government could invoke the Emergencies Act in order to move people against their will for the betterment of everyone else. So, for example, if a building is on fire, you can actually go in there and remove these people. They might be against their will. They might be saying something like, I'm willing to die for this or whatever reason. And the government can come in and remove those people because they're saving their lives. They're saving other people's lives and all this kind of stuff, because worse things can happen. Security, like if we're being invaded or whatever, the government can issue an emergency act like this and then be able to step in and dictate what happens, using this resource for this business or that business, moving people from one place to the next because it involves the safety of those people. That's my interpretation of what the Emergency Act is. Now, in this situation, the area that is concerning to the Prime Minister is Ottawa, downtown Ottawa. So he invoked this act, the Emergency Act, because the idea is he has exhausted all avenues. Could be communication, everything. He's exhausted everything. The question is, did he exhaust all the other resources, and was the province able to handle this on their own? That's the question. So what happens now over the next few weeks? Could be a few weeks, could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, who knows what it is. But what happens now is Justin Trudeau and his body will have to, they will have the burden of proof. They have to prove that they've exhausted all resources. And I think all it would take would be for someone in opposition to be able to just say, did you talk to the truckers? Did you talk to the convoy, the Freedom Convoy? If he says no, well, then you haven't exhausted all your avenues because you haven't even talked to them. So why are you exercising the Emergency Act for this situation? This used to be called the War Act. So why are you doing this now when mandates are slowly being lifted across the country and around the world? Why now? And it's up to the other political leaders to simply ask that question and have a debate in Parliament whether or not the Emergency Act can be invoked at the end of the day, because it doesn't just happen. It starts the process, but he has to get a buy-in from the other political parties to say, yes, we agree. All of us, we all agree. It's not just a matter of just having a conversation and saying, I talked with all the other parties and we are moving forward. Well, that doesn't mean they agreed with you. You have to have them sign off on it and say, yes, we've exhausted all other resources and we have to do this. So that there's going to be a little bit of back and forth for the next few days, whatever, as long as it takes. It could be 24 hours straight of debating. There's no time limit on this. So you can debate on this thing to get this thing resolved. So that's one thing that's going to happen over the next few days. What else? So let's just say this does go into effect. What will happen? Well, if the Emergency Act does get invoked, what could happen is Prime Minister Trudeau could say to this tow trucking company, you have to remove all the trucks downtown. You have to remove them all. And if they say no, they could get fined and all kinds of stuff. Other companies, they could force other companies to do stuff. Like it's going to be a bit of a mess, because now you're actually using the Emergency Act for people. And there is a section in there. I'm not going to read the whole thing. If you are interested in having me read this entire document, I will create a podcast and I'll put there. That way you can listen to it while you're driving all this. If this is of interest to you, I know sometimes for me, just doing research on this, you can't find the documentation other than going to the government website, but there's no audio broadcast on here's what it says. So I think it's kind of important to actually go through the whole document. But if you think that's of interest to you, let me know, and maybe I'll do an audio version where I read the entire thing. Of course, I'm going to edit all the mistakes. But if that's of interest to you, let me know in the comments. What do you think is going to happen over the next few weeks? I think this is dangerous ground for Justin Trudeau, because I think what could happen out of this is if there are enough people opposing what he is doing, maybe they could invoke something like a vote of no confidence, where all of a sudden he's out, his party votes him out, and then, or we get an election down the road. Who knows? Same thing happened to his dad in 1974. I believe Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Pet, tried to propose a new tax or something like that, or new budget, I believe it was. And the opposition party said, no, this is weird. We don't like this. We don't like what you're doing to the Canadians. And they invoked a vote of no confidence, and then an election happened, and Trudeau's dad was out just like that. So this could happen again with Trudeau, with Justin Trudeau. He could be gone. I think this is a mistake on his part. And I hate to encourage someone to say, you know what, if you do this, you're going to stay in power longer and all this. But I feel like it's common sense. Like if you go down this road, I think your time is up. I think your time is up as the prime minister. I think you're not having dialogue with the right people, and you're invoking the Emergency Act, which this is not the time to do this. You tried to do this a couple of years ago, right away, and everybody voted against that. So he's tried this once before. So it was interesting that yesterday he made it as though this has happened, but it's not. People have to debate it. So there you go. There's my 2 cents. Hopefully this wasn't a bit of a ramble here. But if you like this type of content, let me know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If there's a video that you want me to talk about specifically, let me know that as well. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.